Hey everyone, and welcome back. Now today we're going to be talking about the virtuals protocol just because things have been really crazy over there, and so I want to take another quick look at it. We've also seen something change on the virtual site that I want to dive into. I think this is actually really interesting because I played around with it a little bit already, and at least for me and like my own clarity, it gave me a much deeper understanding of kind of how the virtuals ecosystem works, what they're used, like the actual technology they're using to create these AI agents, all that type of stuff. So anyway, let's not waste any more time. Let's go on ahead, dive right in. So anyway, what we can see on the day is obviously things have flipped from red to green. Earlier today, things actually were overall red. We have seen a pretty decent bounce within the alt market generally. We actually can see AI16Z, which is basically the only one that was green earlier today, is now red. We can see Virtuals has seen a really nice bounce. Pengu's seen a decent bounce as well. So has Pepe. Overall, pretty green. Things looking overall relatively nice. And if we also look at Virtuals, we saw highs recently above $4. So we did break that kind of elusive $4 mark, which is really good to see. We'll actually zoom this in a little bit so we can get a little bit better picture of what we're looking at here. I also have kind of made some different lines here. So green are what I would say like kind of major lines of support or resistance. We can see these are kind of like the Pico tops, or like the most points of resistances, or also kind of like the Pico bottoms, the points where things really came down before they started running again. So we can see obviously all-time high would qualify. We could see multiple tops of resistance here before we actually did run through this. We even saw it kind of wick before we made a sustained run. You can see something similar here. Here we also saw, tops and as well as kind of like the Pico bottom when we saw this dip here coming back down to 285. So these are kind of what I would say is kind of like the larger resistances. And then obviously we have smaller level of resistances here in the blue, where we have seen some definite like price action moving around here, but not anything like too crazy to warrant something like a green line. So that's kind of what we're looking at here from like a technical perspective on Virtuals today. We can see has been holding above the Bollinger Band kind of mean line, sitting up. We actually were kind of running against the very outer edges, breaking out of it a couple times. Again, basically, as we always talk on the channel, whenever these are running on the outside of the Bollinger Band line, it's kind of like a sell signal in terms of like short term, right? Because we can see whenever this type of thing happens, it always kind of pulls back. We can see here, same type of thing, here, same type of thing. Now, obviously some of these pullbacks are very minor before we continue our run up, but when we do see this happen, it does lead to a pullback. And so something that you can kind of think about, always interesting. Same thing here on the bottom side, that whenever we see them break out to the bottom, it almost always comes back in, and particularly on a chart like this, usually runs pretty hard to the upside. And so always something to keep an eye on. Just want to point that out in case you guys weren't really super familiar with how Bollinger Bands work. Bollinger Bands basically kind of give you like a statistical probability of how likely the price is going to be in a certain area. So if it pulls outside of the Bollinger Band, then essentially what the Bollinger Band is trying to tell you is that it's highly probabilistically unlikely for that to actually be happening, which is why we almost always so immediately see a pull back inside the Bollinger Band, just because that's essentially kind of what it's saying, simplified down. So anyway, that's kind of what Virtuals is looking like today. I would say, again, continues to look really strong. Just keeps running, isn't really looking to stop anytime soon, at least from what we can see. If you are interested in trading Virtuals or Bitcoin, Ethereum, anything really for that matter, feel free to use my link in the description below for BTCC. They are still doing that 10% bonus on first-time deposits if that is something you're interested in. This is in addition to the extra bonuses of up to $10,055 per user. So a really good deal here. This is basically guaranteed. So if you are looking for a new place to trade, or maybe a second or third exchange just for diversification or whatever, you can do that. They've also been around for 13 years, longer than probably most of us have been, so they're not one of those like here today, gone tomorrow type of exchanges. Also 300 plus crypto futures, so if you have something that you're wanting to trade, they probably have it. Also up to 500x leverage. Again, I'd strongly discourage you using this level of leverage just because it can be very risky, and I would say it's closer to gambling than investing. But you obviously, you need to make your own decision. Maybe you have some sort of strategy that I'm not aware of, and maybe it works out well for you. Also, no VPN or KYC necessary as well, so if that's something you're interested in, then they obviously have that available to you as well. So like I said, if you are interested, just feel free to check that link in the description below and go on ahead and get signed up. Now, moving on, I want to take a look at the Virtuals protocol and just kind of do a high level overview of kind of what we're seeing here. So obviously we can see the marketplace itself. I mean, if you guys are going and following through when we talk about this, these just keep climbing up higher and higher. We can see that Vader has actually broken 100 million. AIXCB has really been running. We can see up 73% just today. Sequoia up over 47 million. When we first started looking, I believe this was sub 20 million. You guys could go check the video that, the first time I talked about virtuals, and you would know for sure, but I think this was sub 20. I know Vader was definitely not over 100. I think AIXBT was down at like 200 or 300 million. So it almost looks to me like kind of wholesale, the entire virtuals ecosystem is up about 2x, at least if we're looking within the top 10. And then the virtuals coin itself probably close to about 2x as well. So things looking really good. We can see the level of inferences here is really, really, really climbing quite fast, which in my opinion, this is exactly what we want to be seeing. Prefrontal cortex convo agent, so convo, Luna, and game, kind of the ones leading overall, but we can see Vader's also creeping up, AIXBT is creeping up as well. Some of these others have been doing that as well. One thing that we did see is there's this try game button that has been added. At least I haven't noticed it in the past. When you do click on it, you get this essentially like simulation of how exactly like their game engine or driver, whatever they're calling it, works. And it's really interesting because you can essentially configure like a simulated agent. I think, at least from what I've been able to kind of find out so far, again, I haven't spent a ton of time looking at this, but at least from what I've been able to figure out so far, this is almost kind of like a test drive. So if you are potentially interested in setting up your own agent through the virtuals protocol, you can use this like protocol, like game light is what they're calling it, and you can see you can essentially simulate what this would look like. And so if you are potentially interested in looking at either setting up a virtuals protocol AI agent, or maybe you just want to know a little bit more of like trying to figure out how these things actually even work, this could be something that could be a really, really interesting place for you to look. And so that's kind of what I want to take a quick look at as far as like the technical ability or the technical like developments within the virtuals protocol. What I wanted to look at next is actually a tweet from back in July. So definitely very, very dated. The purpose of this tweet is not necessarily to like serve as news, because it's obviously not, but I want to use it as kind of like a jumping off point to talk about a larger scale vision of a lot of different things that we've kind of hinted and alluded to in the past, but it's something that I really kind of enjoy as like a thought experiment, thinking about this type of stuff now and again, and just how central crypto could be to the future that we may potentially be living in. And so obviously we can see here is, what if AI agents could own land? What if AI agents could run a virtual economy amongst themselves? What if AI agents had presidential elections of their own? What if intern is an AI agent living in a simulation? Very, very fair. A lot of these are really interesting, like thought experiment type of questions. And it kind of does beg the question of a lot of different things that we've seen so far in crypto. Think NFTs. I mean, the argument for NFTs initially, and I still do think this is an argument that kind of holds right now. I mean, there are some people who are willing to spend, let's say $10, $20, $30,000 on a Rolex for how many people to see in their lifetime, right? I mean, if I go and I try and interact with people, unless I'm, speaking on a stage in front of 100,000 people, at which point no one's really going to see my Rolex up close, maybe tens of thousands of people tops. Well, if I'm an influencer that has 10 million followers, far more people are going to see my profile picture than are ever going to see my Rolex, right? And so I think that's kind of the reasoning for why NFTs kind of ran to the value that they did last bull run, and why I actually think they could be seeing a really, really strong kind of bounce back potentially. Also, if we do live in this world with AI agents and we have hundreds of thousands, millions, billions, trillions of them potentially, they also may want to have some level of like, flexing on everybody else in the world and showing like, oh, if this, if the AIXBT agent can own a crypto punk, then it's obviously doing really, really well, right? And so this is something that I think is interesting to think about. Same type of thing with owning land. This is where like virtual land comes in. Land's one that I have a little bit more of an issue with, just because the reason land is valuable in the physical world is because of where it's located, and there's a level of like presence, I guess, like in relation to everything else in the world. On the internet, like you don't really have that really per se with land, right? I mean, I know, we talk about the metaverse and all this, that, and whatever else, but there's no level of like essentially like adjacency to things. And there's also no level of like scarcity, right? Because in land in the US or wherever, if you want to live in the Bay Area and, in San Francisco, there's like that little peninsula, and that's like all the land that there's ever going to be on that peninsula, right? And so there's a level of scarcity there that kind of forces the value up. virtually, I have a little bit of a hard time seeing how that could happen. Again, that's not to say that it can't, but that's just a little bit of what I kind of think about sometimes. Also, we get to this point in time where, you know, potentially there's, like I said, potentially trillions of AI agents, and maybe my, you know, Twitter or X feed or whatever is like purely just what I want to see. It's all generative because there's enough out there that like people can essentially like, you know, force feed me exactly what I want to see because there's an AI agent for that. And so, you know, potentially a little bit more of like a dystopian or a, you know, interesting kind of potential future outcome of, you know, what if the people that I interact with all day, every day aren't even real people? I mean, there becomes a point in time at which you may never even know, right? And so a lot of really, really interesting things coming about. Obviously, at the base layer of all of this, in my opinion, is crypto. Like, you know, NFTs, actually transacting money, run AI agents running virtual economies amongst themselves. How does all this happen? Crypto, right? I mean, there needs to be a permissionless layer in which people can interact just like we can in the real world. And so this is something that, you know, I really kind of believe in very, very deeply, is that crypto is here to stay. It's not going away. It's only going to become stronger. It's going to be a, you know, 100 trillion, maybe even multi-$100 trillion asset class. So far, cumulatively, it's only about 3.5 trillion-ish so far. So, I mean, you know, obviously, you know, a long, long way to run from here. And I do think it will play a very central and pivotal role in the future. And obviously, you may agree, you may disagree. If you're watching this video, chances are you probably agree, but I guess no guarantees. I talked about some things here today that hopefully got you to think a little bit, and also maybe, you know, just a little bit more like detailed information about the Virtuals protocol specifically. So if I did, please do give me a like and subscribe, because it really, really does help me out. Also, if you have any comments, questions, concerns, anything like that, just drop those in the comment section below. I do try to read and respond to all of those. So if you have anything you want me to see, that'd be a great way to do it. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next video.